ideas. We better go. Don't overdo it, will you, my boy?
Right, Grandpa.
You might exhaust yourself.
Int Base. Goddamn it. Int Base. Goddamn it. Int Base. Goddamn it.
Left.
Int Base. Goddamn it. Int Base. Goddamn it.
Left.
Int Base. Goddamn it. Int Base. Goddamn it. Int Base. Goddamn it. Int Base. Goddamn it.
Left.
Int Base. Goddamn it. 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 Goddamn it. Goddamn it. Goddamn it. Goddamn it.
Yes, well,
You see, the gentleman wanted to take it away. Gentleman. You see, the gentleman.
Like this whip.
And the gentleman. You see, the gentleman.
Like this whip. Do you?
And the gentleman. You see, the gentleman.
Like this whip.
Gentleman. You see, the gentleman.
Like this whip. Do you?
You see, the
Like this whip.
well, that's terrible. That is terrible. We can't let that happen, Grandpa.
Yes, well, of course you've done it now, haven't you?
Welcome in, everybody. I appreciate everybody being here. We got a special guest tonight. We have former Scientologist, Chuck Beatty. And I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's spelled a little bit different than you would expect for the pronunciation. But I have him already in the background, and without further introduction, I'm going to bring him up here. Welcome in, Chuck. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Jacob.
So, Chuck reached out to me when I did that recent video about how do you pronounce it? The Tremel base,
New Mexico.
Trementina base.
Yep.
And he gave me so much information that I didn't even know about, and then he actually has more knowledge about that than I even knew. And with that, Chuck, I'll let you kind of tell the people a little bit about yourself and how you got maybe involved in Scientology, how long you were in it, and maybe what got you there.
Yeah, it's funny. I was a college dropout. So I first dropped out from the University of Maryland. I was an Army brat. So my father was 30 years in the U.S. Army, 1941 to 71. I graduated from Munich American High School on the Army base, which was at Munich, Munich, Germany. And I was born in Germany. My brother was born in Germany. All of my siblings were born on Army bases. Fort Bragg, somewhere in Georgia, Frankfurt, and me in a little city in Germany. So my dad was, 30-year Army guy. Anyways, after right at the end of high school, I went into the University of Maryland Extension branch, which was at Munich, Germany, thinking I might be able to do it. It was extremely hard. University of Maryland was just too high of a hurdle for me. I should have gone to a community college, which I finally did years later when I moved back to the United States. And then I shifted from that community college, which was Phoenix City Community College, to Arizona State University. And if you've ever gone to university, you know, like every spring they'll have like a bunch of guest lecturers come. And even by that time, I'd already started to read, theosophy books. I read some of the spin-off people of Timothy Leary, the LSD guy, and one of his LSD compatriots, but it was John Lilly, the guy who did all the dolphin research. Okay, so I did all that, the isolation tanks, and of course the illegal felony level drugs, which I don't recommend today, but they are so powerful. I mean, at least when I took this stuff, you are gone for 14 hours, man. And your peak periods, when you're peaking, you're like in another dimension.
What year was this? What year was this? Just give us
1970.
Okay.
Was the most powerful stuff. But would I recommend it? No, because it pretty much will throw you like I kind of am more of a straight and narrow person today. I rarely drink. I don't do any of this stuff. Anyways, it just so happens that when I grew up in high school, there was this powerful stuff. Like, it wasn't, this was like above just smoking pot. This stuff would.
You grew up in the prime of the hippie movement, where you were at an actual age where you could kind of take it in.
You were gone, and then you really had to set your day. Like, it wasn't like you just drop this stuff and then go have fun. No. It's gonna shatter your world. I mean, you've talked about your experiences. I don't like to promote it because it is so mind altering. I think it's way more better to just read books.
Yeah.
Honestly. Okay, that's my
maybe some meditation here and there, but I would also not recommend hallucinogens or anything like that.
I do the Polycanon volumes. That's. So anyway, Arizona State University, the springtime lectures, John Lilly, the isolation tank and the LSD, sitting in the isolation tank, dropping acid and getting blown out of his mind. And he was meeting up with interdimensional and cosmic people out there. So he was
John Lilly the one that eventually started the dolphin LSD house that had the woman living there. Right. Half of the house was submerged, and they had dolphins in there, and they were trying to teach him English. Okay.
All his books are just.
He's a deep gentleman. He's a deep gentleman.
When you go to his YouTube videos, he's wearing a Davy Crockett hat with the tail on it, and it was like he was way out there, man. He's talking to, he's in touch with. He's like, I've heard of people on the DMT hallucinations. You start to meet entities, and I ran into a few people in Scientology who had similar experiences before Scientology, and those experiences to them were more powerful than anything that occurred to them in Scientology. So I wouldn't. I mean, if you're a spiritual seeker, I kind of don't promote that. I say go with the Buddha if you're going to go anywhere. And if you want to go into all that stuff, it's in there, and you can get it in deep meditation. There's a meditative teacher today, Daniel Ingram, who tries to coach people through the dark night stuff that you run into on certain type of meditations. But that's not taking powerful hallucinogenic drugs. That's just you meditate yourself into those states. Now, I can do some of that stuff, but I don't do it because it is so mind shifting and mind altering to just go straight into that stuff yourself in your head. I can do it, for a couple hours. It's kind of pleasurable, and you go into these whole other things, like no longer human form stuff, but just like the mandala stuff from India.
Yeah.
The super mandala 3D things, like the super fractal 10-hour things that you can get stoned on YouTube. Yeah. But do I do that? No, because that isn't the end nirvana stuff that I'm interested in. But anyways, back to that's just a fast forward to right now with me. But so in Scientology, I had made a conscious decision, because just before starting Scientology, I had bought 30 tabs of the illegal drug and was going to do that over the summer. And instead I said, nah, I think I'll do Scientology instead. So
which is interesting, because we were having a conversation the other day. We ended up we were just going to kind of touch base and talk, and we ended up sitting and talking for 3 hours, and that's kind of where I let Chuck know that was my same interest in Scientology. A lot of people think I'm a Scientologist. I'm not a Scientologist. I've never been a Scientologist, but I was also interested in the past life regression therapy type stuff that L. Ron Hubbard's original work was based on, outside of his science fiction work. He was going around with Aleister Crowley. He was doing some interesting things that a lot of people in Scientology don't want to talk about. And it seemed like you also had that same inclination about that type of spirituality that was coming from Scientology.
Well, you mentioned a couple of other people that led up to me going there, like Alan Watts. I had heard about Alan Watts before I got in Scientology. Alternative radio, just before I got, in the 70s. I got in Scientology in 75. So it's going to be a couple of years after.
So your Terrence McKenna's,
I don't believe Terrence McKenna had just come out, but the other Alan Watts was definitely out. Baba Ram Das, Richard Alpert, who was a compatriot of Lilly. So the guys that are getting into, Carlos Castaneda, his thing was a couple of illegal drugs down in Mexico. What is it? The peyote and the other stuff. Anyways, having those powerful hallucinations and getting your animal and a lot of sorcery stuff. So I kind of was just buying into it. I would say probably leaning on the experience of having taken the hallucinogenic drugs, because you could get into these mind states where you don't even feel your body. You're like in a whole other dimension. I got into the sort of brown dimension for a while. I was wondering, could I come back to my body or not? So I was like, it's I wouldn't recommend this stuff. Oh
yeah, you can bring yourself to states where you wonder for a second if you can come back. You're like, am I stuck here? Yeah.
There's a very famous song that I used to play, and it once you have a few of those pretty far gone experiences, it really hits home. It was the song, "Can You Ever Come Down?" Da da, you can never come down. Da da da. So that if you take too much of that stuff, that you unfortunately can do some damage. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't recommend. Yeah. Anyways, obviously, so...
somebody commented on something you said in the chat. They said Don Juan books. I don't know. They were talking about...
Yeah, that's right. Carlos Castaneda. So I had a bunch of lead-up books to getting into Scientology, but I wanted to go the non-drug spiritual enlightenment. And then Scientology, what it promises, even when you go in and you do their introductory stuff, you ask the right questions. I think in life, that's the thing. You got to formulate your questions, got to ask the right questions, ask enough questions, ask more detailed questions, sit down and formulate in your mind what your questions are, and then you can get straight answers out of people most times, or in Scientology, they'll even refer you to their books, and they did in my case. I put that one on the introductory course, and in about the 6th chapter of one of the books that you study, the 2 introductory books, it talks about the out-of-the-body experience, and that and it implies, unfortunately, that it's the language that L. Ron Hubbard uses is kind of like a con man. He doesn't state directly that that everyone's going to guarantee to get it, but he says things like, L. Ron Hubbard says, whenever I was case supervising somebody while they were doing the you mentioned the co-therapy stuff, the therapy called the L rundowns. Hubbard expected the person, once they got the proper result, to find themselves outside of the body with 360-degree visio. Imagine that. Imagine 360 video, because we actually only have 180 visio. Imagine having 360, and so that's what grabbed me about Scientology. I thought, okay, it's got all these charts and all these like levels and all the courses. Then eventually you're supposed to get the 360 visio when you become when the recipient of the pseudotherapy that they do on the L 10, 11, and 12 rundowns, which are delivered by their highest level practitioner pseudotherapist, which is called the Class 12 auditor. So, and then that's what Clearwater's about. Guess what they deliver in Clearwater? The Class 12s are in at Clearwater. That's where you get your L rundowns, where you're supposed to get 360 visio experience. At that point, you're supposed to attain this complete certainty that you're an immortal soul. Oh, but back to my story. That's what hooked me, and I was told this by the introductory training classroom person where I did my very first course in Scientology. So if you ask the right questions right at the beginning, they can hook you.
Well, and that's the strangest thing, and because I was kind of comparing my first encounters with Scientologists, and the way I introduced it was I specifically said, hey, I'm interested in some of his work with Dianetics and his past life experience stuff, and they went a whole different route with me. And I don't know if it was because of my income or what it was or why they were guessing, where to place me or what they wanted to do with me, but I actually told you that they had tried to get me involved with helping build the new Chicago Sea Org. They were getting ready to transfer buildings, and I told them I was in construction, and they were like, blah blah blah. Like, would you be interested in doing this? And I'm like, I was like, you guys probably couldn't offer me enough to work for you. I was like, to be honest, I was like, but like I said, I'm interested in this information, and I took all of these courses there were self-help ones, and I told you I was giving a little bit of an ego stroking to them. I was like, oh yeah, this helped me with this, and this helped me with this, and then so they would just clear me past all of these other things right away, and they still just never gave me that type of information that they were giving you on an introductory course. So back to your story, how long did it take you to kind of move up the ladder in Scientology? Was it a quick path? Yeah. Or
within 1 year, between May and December, I joined the Sea Organization, which is the lifetime thing. So between May and December of 1975, I did the introductory course. I did their second course, which has a really bad purpose and name. It's called the Hubbard Qualified Scientologist. So when you buy into that one, you're basically buying membership into them, because at the end you have to sign on the dotted line that you now believe you're a Scientologist. I balked. I didn't want to sign that. I felt like, realistically, give me a break. You walk into Scientology, you see all these books, you see all these volumes, you see all this stuff. There's no goddamn way that you can really feel like you're a qualified Scientologist. And even by the time after 27 years, in terms of their technology, their spiritual practices stuff, I never became a Class 12. But that's what by December, I joined the Sea Org to come to Clearwater, and I went to Clearwater to train up to be a Class 12. I only got to Class 3, so I was like far from Class 12. And when I was a Class 3, I was doing some of their auditing. I'd qualified to do the first internship at Flag, which is very high standards, but still, I wasn't really good with the Scientologists who come there, the Gotbooks Scientologists. So they expect really high standards. And guess what my mistake was? I had one of those bouncy legs. Okay. Like some people have a neurological thing where your leg's always bouncing, or it tends to bounce,
So they thought you had a root issue that you had to work out?
I hit the table, and then the customer who's getting the pseudotherapy from me complained. He said, yeah, I didn't expect that coming to Clearwater, to the highest Scientology place, that my auditor, me, would 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 hit the table with his leg like that. So that was it. I then became a paper pusher training department person for the next 6 years, and I became very adept in the whole cult bureaucracy training for the staff. And as you noticed, whenever you walk into a Scientology place, they're all paper pushers. The actual pseudotherapists and exorcist people are very few and far between. And they're really the spiritual practitioners. They're like run like dogs, you know. They're just like all day long doing this therapy on somebody, and that's how they make their money. It's basically, if you were to think of a psychiatric office with too many people who are the paper pushers supporting getting the person to sit down with the psychiatrist, that's what Scientology is. Or if another way to think of them is sort of like a barber college. You know, you go in there and they got a lot of rooms for everybody to practice being a barber. You know what I mean? So you go into Scientology churches, they're like office. They're more like an office building where they have a classroom where you study their courses. Then you have the little rooms where you sit down and then you do practice auditing on somebody else until you become really proficient at it. And then the most proficient auditors, which are their pseudotherapists, that are the staff auditors, they sit down and they'll audit paying public. So somebody like you, I can just make, when they're thinking ahead of, oh, you're going to help us build the Chicago order. Yeah, we need you. Hey, you know, so they're going to stroke you to try, you know, they think of you as a resource. So unfortunately, that's their whole mentality. And that's the way Hubbard looked at all the members. And that's why they have too many paper pushers.
I was gonna say, that just made me think of a question that I didn't ask you the other day. What was the going hourly rate for an auditing session back in your time?
Too much for me, and I was
too much for you.
Too much for me. I was a college student.
I have an actual price now that they gave for because they gave me the price afterwards, and they offered me free sessions, and they still have a free session for me on the table. I've never done it. I was telling Chuck about this. I've never actually taken an auditing session. Now they're at a $200 an hour auditing session with a minimum of 6 hours.
Okay, so I brought today a little show and tell stuff here.
Okay.
See these? This is a volume. This is a what?
Flip it over.
It's right up. No, I do. Okay, so it says grade processes and prepared lists. Guess what this volume is? This is all of the commands. If you took this to a desert island, you could supposedly reach the Scientology clear level. In here are all of the questions that you get asked. What part of a blank would another rather not confront? What could another withhold from you? Those are like typical questions that are in this book. And this book is just pages and pages of all the questions that you pay for to get. Like, for instance, today, if a person really wanted to do the Hubbard pseudotherapy, you just go on the internet, you buy this book, you sit down and ask yourself the questions, and then think of the answers. There's a whole additional part of Scientology which you get trained on these courses, and they make such a big deal out of it. But really, all the only Hubbard kind of thing is his psychiatry, his mental therapy, spiritual therapy, they kind of talk, because the end goal is for you to gain full realization of yourself as a soul, and even at times exteriorized, go out of the body, and at that point have this realization that you're a pure soul. I believe it's an hallucination when you leave the body, but that's my interpretation now. But if you did believe the spiritual thing, this particular volume has all of the questions from the bottom up to clear. You'd have to still do the purification rundown all by yourself, but you could do that too. You buy that one stupid book. So all you'd have to do is these two books, and then you wouldn't have to pay a dime more. I mean, if you knew who to talk to about it.
So does the auditor go through a book like that and then direct certain questions towards the person that they think would be
exactly
okay?
Yeah, but they are in mimeograph form, and then the questions that you get done get stapled into their. They have a lot of paperwork. They have these what are called your your case folders.
Yeah, your
And
file, if you will.
Your file, your
Yeah.
case files. So, man, you have thousands of. I mean, I had 127 case files when I was done after 27 years. It just was like massive. You know, they're all about this thick, and they just pile up. And it's all. I consider it all BS today, though.
And
But if you wanted to try to take them seriously, I highly recommend getting these. And this is only number 4. The 1, 2, and 3 give you some other theoretical stuff about their. Here's another one. Here's a bigger, fatter one. Look at this one.
jeez.
These are the auditing rundowns. Remember, I opened
Yeah.
up and showed you when I'm doing kind of what I did when I tried to give a talk to the. I got invited up to talk to a class of ministers at a college up in Toronto, Tyndale University, and this volume has all the famous rundowns, which you can do at your Chicago organization. You can do every single one of these, but they're here in this book. So if you knew the right person to talk to, you could skip the whole Scientology BS gauntlet. Talk to one of us. Here's another volume. So I always tell people, you just need these 4 volumes, the ones I'm showing you here. You do these, you go take these to a desert island. That'll keep you occupied for a year or 2.
I have a feeling if you took those to a desert island, they'd end up being firewood pretty quick.
Or toilet paper.
Kindling or something.
Yeah.
But
So and then what I did was I worked in the paper pusher department. This volume is just one of 13 similar. This is called the Organization Executive Course. In the,
Okay.
I think in one of the things that you have of me, you have me as a black. Is it a black and white photos of me as a course supervisor? After I became trained, after about 2 years at Clearwater, I taught. I was, in the classroom teaching the paper pushers, the cult paper pushers, how to do their stuff. So, if you think,
so what was your general thing that you were teaching them how to do? As
So okay, so you want here's some typical things. Here's like this is the basic volume for all staff. Every single one of the paper pushers you run into in the Chicago organization will have studied this whole volume. So when you go into the classroom to study this, it's self-study, and you have a person who walks around and helps you. You're the walk-around helper. You're called the course supervisor. And this has all the stuff. Basic hat. How to study this course. I mean, Scientology is stupid about they make you do so many minutia, which kills your curiosity. You're curious and you never get your questions answered. They drag you on for years, but then they tell you, okay, how you study the course. Keeping Scientology working. In other words, how to be a good Scientologist. Safeguarding technology. All the basic principles. But then there's some good ones here. You know what an org is? The Scientology churches that call themselves orgs. Here's one: the business of orgs. The business of orgs. Just look at that. This is the index. So they're just pages and pages of these. Now, what I'm showing you, these books, the pages of every single one of these books is online for free. So you don't even need to get the big volumes. You can get all of Scientology's. These are the 1991 edition. Now, they don't use these anymore. Do you know why? Because when they were putting them together, they made so many typographical errors in them that we in the classrooms discovered they were just so full of errors that it caused so much problems for the students. Typographical errors, because we were the ones who were doing our own proofreading, and we ran our staff ragged at the base where Mark Headley is at. There were people that working in what was called the compilations branch, where they do all the pre-steps, the pre-publishing steps, and proofreading all these materials. and they were missing all these typographical errors. So then the end product of these books were just full of typographical errors, which sharp students would see. Other people that are
Wouldn't
really,
pick it up right away.
no, they didn't care, because you're there for a purpose. Like, if you kept your initial drive for why you're even there, a typographical error really doesn't mean crap to you. You get the basics, because like you talked about the past life stuff. So what is Scientology? All it is a past lives therapy. So what I showed you in some of those books.
Well, that, and it seems like more of like a self-help to trying to get rid of whatever trauma you think you might have, or they think you might have, like
Yeah.
whatever root trauma that you're holding back, that's holding you back.
Well, the basic thing, the Dianetics book, they call them engrams. They're the heavy duty moments of unconsciousness. Like if you slug and knock some guy out, and then you shout at him, like let's say some guy's knocked out in the ring, and he's like out cold, and then his trainer slapping him on the face and say, "Wake up, loser! Wake up, loser!" That would be an engram, and that statement, calling him a loser, would then cause him to lose his next 5 fights.
Yeah.
That's what Hubbard says. So Hubbard says that the suggestions you receive while you're unconscious are very important. So, and then he was looking
And
back.
I actually gave you a comparison when you brought this up to me when we were talking the other day, when I was talking to a lady from, she wasn't from Bridge Publications, but she was from one of the branches in California. And I remember her last name's Chan. And I had told you my significant other has hydrocephalus, an uncurable condition. It's a very rare condition. And she used the comparison of somebody drowning in a pool and somebody saying, you can't swim, he can't swim, and then somebody maybe develops asthma or something like that, and that it's basically psychosomatic, and it's because somebody was yelling from the sidelines saying something and it made you think that you can't do that, or you can't breathe, or something like that. And they were basically trying to tell me that my my significant other's incurable disease was curable by the mind. And I'm like, well, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some things that are a little bit you could be in your head about, but that's not the same as some of these other things. But yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, okay, that's what they mean by engram. Like,
Yeah. Just keep that thought. That's all you truly need to know about the whole bottom part of Scientology. And then clearing is removing, is going back, reviewing, because you're getting all these millions of commands. And I didn't pull out the Dianetics. There's a Dianetics from 1950 style that then improved a little bit. Late 50s, they had a little bit of improvement. The early 60s, they had a little bit more improvement on the Dianetic style. End of the 1960s, they came out with what was called Standard Dianetics. It's a series of 14 different commands, and it walks the person through the incident in a real sort of systematic way. And it has a couple of questions at the end of the 14 steps where it asks you to go earlier similar. Is there an earlier similar incident? And when you ask people to recount a particular traumatic incident in this lifetime, you keep asking earlier similar. And then some people right away will just come up with an answer, will come up with images from this, something that didn't happen this lifetime. That's going to be the little kernels of mental images and stuff, supposedly from your past life incident. So your first couple of times you go into a past life incident, it'll be kind of messy and it'll be different. The first time you look at it, it's not going to be the same as the second time or the third time. So that's one of the reasons why it's called, they consider it also brainwashing or whatever it is.
well, and that also comes down to the auditor that you have too. I've started to notice that, because depending on what they know to dig into, because sometimes they dig the wrong way, and you can just see them like, they're like, well, no, that's just not traumatic to me. And then other times they can nail it on the head. You guys can get it on the first session, but you don't really want to get it on the first session, it seems like, in Scientology, because that would solve the problem too quickly. Like, why point out the problem too quickly when you could just get them back?
We write our sessions on what are called worksheets. We call foolscap paper, 14 inches by, 8.5, 7.5. And then you draw a line down the center and you start scrolling, and you write down a notation for the question you use from the book. And then you let the person answer the question. You write down their answer. you have to write in regular legible writing. Different auditors don't write as clearly as others. Some are really good. Some are really quick writers. Some are not. You have to write down your notations because you got everybody who goes in session holds on to the cans, and you have to write down 4, 5, 6 of the different little things that appear on the little e-meter gizmos that you're using. So you have to write down those notations.
Yeah.
You're talking and you're looking what's happening on the needle dial. There's a needle dial, and that uses to supposedly tell you what they're thinking when they say mother, and the needle just shoots over to the right. You go like, oh, that would mean that the person has trouble with their mother, some kind of upset with their mother, or or maybe their needle just floats. It's real nice, and okay, on that subject they're fine. So basically, you have to
Off of your experience, what do you think that's picking up? Is it just electro I don't know what you'd call it, like nerve reaction that's coming through your body? And so when they say certain trigger words or something like that, it would make the meter read, and then they go, oh, okay, we need to dive towards that, because that's what I've seen is they actually go towards the direction of, all right, as soon as the needle moves, that's where we need to head towards. Like, all right, this is where we need to deep dive.
There's sort of a communication breakdown when any Scientologist is talking to you about what your initial perceptions are about the e-meter gizmo. They go through so many training on so many of the different we call them needle manifestations. Sometimes the needle goes like this, sometimes it goes like this, sometimes it goes boom like this, and you have to even adjust this other thing called the tone arm, because the needle is continuing to go in that direction and try to push it back on the dial and just keeps going, and you keep pushing it back, it keeps going. Sometimes it'll flip flop both ways, and then you have to like adjust it just to get it so it does this.
So you have to dial it in with each person almost.
Yes, and different parts of the incident that they're talking about. You get all these little manifestations, and then when somebody's in heavy grief, there's some really confusing ones. You get some of the smoothest, most beautiful needle reactions when somebody is like in heavy grief, like when my grandmother died and I was in severe grief. My needle was going back and forth like this, and it was really alarmingly really beautiful. And I had a class 8 auditor who was auditing me at that time, which was only 4 down from the top.
Yeah.
And my auditor was really a great auditor. She said, your needle's floating, and then ended the session. And I said, I think that's a different type of manifestation, which is called something else, needle. Not the good one, but the bad one. So for the very same, and this is an advanced answer to your question, but just to give you specifics, if you've spent years with those meters, you've seen, and I spent years and had hundreds of trainees pick up the cans, and I've seen tens of thousands of needle manifestations of all types, and I tried to put those together with all the training that we had for what do those needle reactions mean. That would be, I would then think that you need an outside expert. Like you immediately thought, your immediate first thoughts are probably correct, and it would take an expert on polygraph stuff. But you can lie to the meter. You can have identically bad emotional thing going on and an identically incredible. There's a person in the Scientology organization called the Examiner. He's the one who's got his own little tiny little cubicle, and he's got the meter there. And you come in there after you've had a session, and you pick up the cans, and then you say something about your session. Oh, it's a great session, lousy session, whatever. And then he looks on he's got the gizmo, and then your needle's supposed to sweep back and forth in a floating fashion. And then the examiner says, your needle's floating. So that means it's a good thing. That means you had a properly good session.
Because that seems like almost at peace. Like you don't have something that's holding you. You know what I mean? You're just kind of floating. You're free floating.
Right.
Yeah.
It's uninfluenced, floating. And guess what? I got to do, you'll find a lot of the critics of Scientology, the famous ones that have been on TV and stuff like that. they've been the examiner when people, famous celebrities, sat down to receive their after session examination. So that's why there's a whole, like when you walk into a Scientology organization, you have like 30, 40 paper pusher people in all these different positions. They'll rub elbows with whoever comes in to do their training. So one of the jobs is examiner. So whenever you're qualified to do the meter examination, you can give an exam. So I gave exams all the way up to the man named Norman Starkey, and he was receiving some of the highest level Scientology stuff. And his needle was insanely loose. It would just go all the way off that way. And I had to adjust the sensitivity to get it back, and it was still going off. And then it would come back. It's his floating needle, which is a good thing, has a different name. It's called a floating tone arm. And he genuinely, after the sessions that I gave him the exam, his needle would just like float like that. So so that would be an example of, after having some of the highest Scientology pseudotherapy by one of the top guys in the movement, his needle, and I saw his needle, it was unmistakably bigger, and I had seen 3,000 or 4,000, maybe 10,000 needle reactions of students and trainees over my years as I rose up to the top ranks. I then rose up to work at the fake literary agency in Los Angeles, where Norman Starkey was, and some of these other top figures. And
what do you refer to as the
he
fake
was the
literacy
trustee.
agency?
He was the LRH. He was the Hubbard trustee. He's passed away.
What are you referring to when you say the fake literary organization?
Author Services Incorporated.
And is that related to Bridge Publications, or is it?
It's above Bridge Publications.
Okay. So Bridge would get their information from them. Okay.
No, Bridge would be church publications. Author Services is considered the Hubbard fictional literary works, but also the group, Author Services Incorporated. They were like the most dedicated people closest to Hubbard. They're associated with the Trementina base people, the archives. Those would be the archives group of top Sea Org members. And when I was working, I worked at Author Services from 92 to 95. The money that was made by selling Hubbard's fiction works, Battlefield Earth, and all of his pulp science fiction that they resell today, and any other, Author Services would, at the time Hubbard was living, between 82 and 80, I think Author Services was made in 80 or 81, between there and when he died in 86. The way to legally get the money to him was via Author Services. And the staff that made up the Author Services fake literary office, it of course doesn't consider itself a fake literary office, but it is, because it only served one author, Hubbard. Wasn't a real literary agency. But when I worked there, you learn kind of like Hubbard's last wishes to his last team of people, and that's the group of the Author Services group. From that group is where David Miscavige was working before he took over the church proper.
So that gentleman that passed away, he's the one that made the claim that L. Ron Hubbard was the most published author of all time. I think we had talked about this the other day, and you said something about these people had walked by your office. They were like 3 doors down from you in a building or something like that. Or am I mistaking part of a different conversation that we were having?
Yeah, like 3 doors down. What would that be?
Yeah, well, you said these gentlemen came in with briefcases. I don't know if they were leaving that base, or if we were talking about during the tax evasion times. These gentlemen actually showed up at the office that you were at with information. I don't know if I'm conflating the two of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I was in on that particular incident. If you were talking to somebody else, there's like at least 40 or 50 people that used to work in Author Services, and then some of the most important ones who've worked in Author Services haven't gone public yet, but most of them have. I'm kind of like I was a lower down guy. When I was in author services, I was their computer guy. I worked in their little computer office, but I had all these other skills. So therefore, I was a trainer. I was a staff training officer person. So I would do like stuff like after session examinations, and which are only a tiny part of the day's work. Even in author services, it's all paperwork having to do with publishing of Hubbard's fiction works, working to make sure that the Trementina-based people and all of the other people at the Church of Scientology Spiritual Trust, little special place where it's considered the LRH, the Hubbard archives of all of Hubbard's works are kept there. Oh, the full thing, the full, what are called the L. Ron Hubbard originals, kind of like the original manuscripts. That's why you don't realize.
So when I was going over it, like briefly in my little short that I put out, what all do they have at the Tremina base? Is it all on steel tablets, like they say? It all of it's backed up on steel tablets, or do they also have other information there outside of Hubbard's work? Or
so this gets into the speculation of what is there, but some of us have some pretty good grounds for our speculation based on all of our history in the movement, what we've heard from other people, what is public knowledge by a lot of other people that have left. I speculate that, and I do believe Janice Grady, who's on the Peeling the Onion podcast with Mark Fisher, those are two like goldmine individuals. Janice worked for, 9 or 10 years right next to L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. And then Mark worked for 6 years right next to and doing everything David Miscavige said. So they're really in the know people. I was in the know in terms of sort of like the writings of Hubbard, what he wrote down on paper, because of my training years, being so familiar with these volumes that the students, the staff trainees had to study. And when you're the course supervisor, even though you don't lecture on these, you get asked a lot of questions that you do have to then answer. So you become pretty sharp on all the little fine points on everything. And then I was very loyal. So then I moved up to be in the author services, top of the triangle thing, but only after the power that was in author services had moved over to what's called the Religious Technology Center, which is a little sub-bureaucratic unit at the international base where Mark Headley worked, and Mark Headley's wife, Claire, she worked in Religious Technology Center, and she, sometimes was considered number 3 in RTC. So it's like these people, and then they were interacting with the real power people. I was over to author services, which is still
Claire had direct contact with Shelley Miscavige, I believe.
Yeah.
She was.
I had a few incidents. David Miscavige, when
you had, I didn't know. We never even talked about that. Have you met either David or Shelley?
I'll give you a good example. When David came, you remember there's a very famous historical incident in 1992, 1993, when the Church of Scientology gained IRS tax exemption. So just before he was like going back and forth and prepping for the big gala event. You may have heard of this. It's on the internet.
Oh yeah, I saw the gala event. Yeah, no, I saw that. I definitely witnessed that.
I was there.
Yeah,
I was there. And then just before the event, when they were doing all their last minute preps for the thing, David Miscavige had an office at Author Service. He had a corner office, and I was a computer guy there, so I had to go in there and make sure all the computer workstations worked. So he didn't know which desk he was going to use, so you had to always make sure all the PCs, the personal computers, worked on all the desks, And he took the whole corner office to himself, and then he had Shelley in the next closest little cubby office right next to him. And so she's just like a watchdog for nobody ever goes in his office. When he kept the door right open, and then the next office down the hallway from him was Norman Starkey, and then the next office was like a conference room. And then the next office was my office. So I'm only 2 offices away from Miscavige's office at Author Services at the time when he's doing the visit thing. So my boss, who's like 3 down from the top of Author Services, tells me, make sure everything is perfect. don't want to mess up his time. So he had a tiny little glitch on his computer. I just jumped out of my computer office, went straight into his office, went straight to his computer, and then, hit Control Alt Delete, just to unbug his computer.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you can do is you can just turn the computer off and turn it back on, with power on the power strip on the ground. That's another quick way to just solve all problems and all issues. So, but you got to wait there 45
And
seconds.
say maybe in the early '90s. It's not that easy nowadays.
Yeah. So I was the computer guy, and that was 1993. Okay. So anyway, that was my interaction of being, brushing up against his leg as I'm underneath his desk, powering off and on the little thing. So, and I was real social with him, and I just did it. He's on the phone talking to lawyers, and then I walked out. And then as soon as I walked out of his office, Shelly stopped me and says, don't ever, Chuck, don't ever do that again. Don't just walk in on COB like that. I go okay. And I go back to my office, and then I ran into him going to the bathroom every once in a while, right where my office was. Directly across it was the the group bathroom, which was just out. My office was right next to the kitchen on the floor, the floor where the author services top people were. Then there was another floor below in author services where the next echelon down people were. And then when I was living in the Big Blue building, I think Big Blue complex, right?
Yeah. Yep. The
Okay,
Celebrity
there was a
Center.
yeah. So there's two wings. There's two wings, which are author services staff. When I was in the 90s, they hadn't moved out of the complex. They were still author services staff were still living there. And there's a locked door card key to get in there. And when I was my first birthing room, the room that I lived in with my wife at the time, then my next door neighbor was who? Norman Starkey. Right across the hall, on the other side of the hall, guess who lived there? David Miscavige. So a couple times we'd come home, me and my spouse, and then you'd smell these strawberry pancakes because he had a kitchen there. We didn't have kitchens in our room. The Starkeys didn't have a kitchen. I mean, they might have had a coffee pot, but and I didn't have one. But the computer guy at Author Services was given such closeness because back in the 90s and back in the 80s, there's so many computer glitches and everything was done by computer and all these different kinds of things. So they always kept the computer guy close. When I became the first occupant in the computer, the way the assignment of birthing rooms was, you basically go into the room of the former occupant of your position. So I moved into Author Services in 1992 to replace somebody who had vacated the position. So I inherited their birthing space right next to Starkey. And whenever Miscavige was visiting at that time, he did live in that room across the hall. And I'd say hello type thing to him. And my spouse did chat with him a little bit more than me, and so much so that I went into the room and she kept chatting with him. You know what I mean? So, you could kind of approach him in off hours type of thing.
So I had to ask, you said when you brushed up against his leg, I was like, well, I've heard he's not the tallest man. Did he brush up against your leg, or did?
Oh, no. He was intensely on the phone. He is extremely short. You'd go like, wow, that dude is short when you see him. He's like 5'1", 5'2" at most.
I was gonna say I can't pass up a good short David Miscavige joke.
He's shockingly short. Now, I played basketball with them. I played volleyball with them. I've been in the elevator with them, with all of his towering. Marty Rathbun was his one right man.
Marty's a big guy. Marty's a decent big guy.
He's a muscular guy. You play street basketball with him. I don't know how big you are. I couldn't. There's no way I could beat Marty or the Miscavige's other right hand guy is Greg Wilhair. Both of them are good.
So he just always had them on his team, and then that's how he did well on the basketball court.
Not only that,
that's the way to do it.
you know how subordinates will lose in golf to their boss. During the day off that we all had for Sea Organization, you know, the religious order of Scientology at the international base, in the years I was there, we'd have these, there's basketball courts there, and then sort of all the plebes would play basketball game, and then Marty and Miscavige and Greg Wilhare, they'd play like a three-man pickup together. And you would see, I mean, Miscavige would be incapable of making a shot, you know, because they would just snuff him. But they always let him shoot. They let him drive around them. I mean, they just let him, you know, have fun, which is kind of, it's really a sad, I noticed that a number of times when I was at the international base. The unfortunate fact is the kids who are growing up as Sea Org members didn't really have a chance to really become equal sports adept as kids growing up in a full society. You just don't have the coaching, you don't have so it's only the Sea Org members who had already had a previous life before joining the Sea Org who are normal people. The kids who grew up within the Sea Organization, they're gonna have a really tougher time transitioning back out to life. I unfortunately observed that because I saw some of them from the moment they were born as babies, and then later seeing them in my final years, because I was in there a total of 27, and I saw them from 75 to when I finally quit stopped bumping into them in 2003, and you realize, oh man, they've lived a very deprived, normal American life by growing up within the movement. There's an excellent book by a man named Jamie Mustard. He tells about the really extreme horrors of growing up as a Sea Org child offspring in Los Angeles. His book is just one of the best ex-Scientology kids growing up book ever written.
And so you were in before Miscavige became prevalent. Did you see a lot of people kind of leave Scientology during that point, during that transition, because they didn't think he was holding the same message as, because it seemed like he had other, L. Ron Hubbard had other people in mind for successors, and it just ended up happening to be David Miscavige. And I don't know how that eventually happened.
Question. It's a very innocent question, and it's a very detailed, complex answer, which you can't really almost get people to listen to. I mean, in life, it's pretty monkey see, monkey do. Usually you have a leader. The leader tells everybody else what to do. Even if the leaders, L. Ron Hubbard, thought of himself as so big and so great, he needed to have little cult bureaucracies, sub-bureaucracies, take over what he called his hat of running the movement. So he didn't really have one guy running the movement. He had little teams. He had a think tank, which was called the Executive Strata. He had the execution arm, which would just execute his strategies, plus also responsible for HR, for all of the top cult bureaucracy subunits. That was the Commodore Messengers unit and Watchdog Committee, and they wrote the strategies. And then they had, if you go, there's a very important 1980s book called The Command Channels for Scientology. It has a pie chart, and the pie chart has all of the Watchdog Committee subunits, and every single one of the Watchdog Committee subunits are all within the CMO branch, the Commodore Messenger Org. Janice Grady was one of those Commodore Messenger, grown up from the Apollo days of the late 1960s up until when that pie chart was made, with all the split up responsibilities of not just the strategic stuff, and then there's the think tank stuff, and then there's also the RTC, religious tech. It gets too gobbledygook. You can't give somebody. But Hubbard.
Well, it's because like when I was thinking around like the publicly known circles around him, like I even thought Shelley was closer to L. Ron Hubbard than David was,
Good.
And it never
right.
really
You're
made
right.
a lot of sense to me. And I never knew how he ended up in that position over other people, especially when there were so many people handling the financial thing that actually got them past that tax exemption. Because that's what he eventually passed away hoping for. Like he really wanted to be tax exempt. That was the goal at that point. And then
That relates
moving
directly
around money.
back to your Trementina discovery. Trementina couldn't exist until tax exemption was gained.
Okay.
And then wanted to bring it back to how important. That's why I was so blown away when I saw your videos. I'm like, holy crap! You just like stumbled on the top gold of the whole goddamn Hubbard charade in such. There's so many important factors that led in to you spotting that, because it's like like in the movie what was it one, the Temple of Doom, over when
when the knights are guarding the temple.
You stumbled into the cave of the Holy Grail, dude. That's what Trementina is.
Well, I was just so intrigued by it because when you hear about underground, I mean, that's my conspiracy brain. When you start hearing about underground bases and underground facilities, and then they tell you they have these tablets down there, and then that they want them to outlive humanity, I immediately go, "Oh, okay, sorry, this is something I have to look into." And I had told you I've now found the phone number to said airport. You were telling me you even knew, was it one of the pilots? Yeah, you knew one of the pilots to the base?
When I was at ASI, Author Services, the pilot and one of the other workers, I forgot their names now, but I've written about this. I've got over 10,000 important historical comments on the internet. So if anybody ever wanted to extract anything that I've ever remembered, it's on the internet in comments somewhere.
Was it Matt and Harvey?
Yeah, Matt and Harvey, yeah.
Okay. I was taking notes when we talked.
Harvey was the pilot, and Matt was the construction guy. All right, so it's been a lot of years. It's been years and okay, we're talking 30 years already, 35 years now. So they've and then I knew the couples. They're two-man teams. A husband and wife would go be at the other vaults, the ones that they had somebody there 24/7 for year in, year out. I knew them because remember I was in the staff training, so I was training. I trained them when they were doing this, when they were doing stuff from this one, from that book, when they were beginner Sea Org members. So I've crossed paths with thousands and thousands of Sea Org members. I know them. And when you see the same student every day, because when you go in the classroom, it's not like the lecturer where you don't necessarily know each one of the students. In a Scientology classroom, you have a roll call sheet with every single one of your students. And then you go visit that student. They have like their a syllabus, which is called a check sheet. And that has all of the Hubbard issues that they're going to study, has all of the exercises and drills they're going to do, all of the stuff they're going to do. And I have to sign my name at the end of their check sheet saying this person has studied all this stuff and they can do it all 100%. So we're like this kind of a coach, kind of like a waiter, kind of like a helper for the students to get through their training. So you get to see them every day. So you get
But you probably have a good determination of who's more committed to it than others, like the ones that are asking you questions, the ones that are, trying to pass by, or just trying to get through it.
You don't get people that are just trying to pass by. If you get people that are trying to pass by, they're gone. There's a screening to becoming a fanatic in Scientology. You become a Sea Org.
You'd assume so.
You've stepped over the threshold when you become a Sea Org member. You're a fanatic at that point. You're gonna be, and then somebody and that's why I thought Miscavige has strong points in pushing people to do things, which are really hard. He's a good pusher type of guy, but he's not himself capable of doing a lot of the stuff he pushes other people to do. And he's basically just I don't even really have enough outside life experience to really compare him. But a lot of people say corporate CEOs are sometimes sociopathic, sort of like just, behind the scenes, just demanding incredible pressures on their subordinates. Now, that's the style that he tends to run most of the time.
is that what he grew up with, like from his dad Ron and everybody that was
I
originally
would
like
say
that?
more from Hubbard.
Did you ever meet Ron, David's father? No.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that one of the if you go to the one link that I gave you is a playlist of all the interviews. Ron Senior, Miscavige's dad's interview with me is there.
Oh, okay. I've seen his Joe Rogan interview. I actually haven't seen. I didn't watch yours, but if anybody's looking for the list that I have, I actually put it in the description as well, so anybody can pull that up that sees this video as well. It's all in the description, so you can pull up those videos. What did you guys like? What? Because I remember when Ron got out and he got kind of excommunicated. Do you think like David was getting pushed like that growing up? And it was just,
Yes.
and that's what he tried to reinforce, is kind of what I was going with. And he was trying to keep that same pressure on everybody else below him, or just wanted to keep them below him in general.
There's enough material, I think, that's been put out. I think Ron Miscavige Sr., the one who passed away, I do believe he might have, it's just my opinion, he was a little soft on admitting all of the pressure that he may have put on David. I think the better person to ask about what was David like would be his brother, Ronnie Jr., who is, he's not given, I don't believe he's given any interviews to the press. He may have confirmed things to some of the book writers, but Ronnie Jr., his brother, his older brother, you can see the conflict there. His older brother is taller and more athletic than was David. Ronnie was a gymnast, the gymnast, the guys who can, put their legs out straight, on the horse, and and he can, and then in one of the videos, one of the joke videos that the top execs produced, Ronnie leaps up into the air and he does a full split, he's like, he's like one of those David Lee Roth, Van Halen, jump up in the air type of splits. He can do that. I mean, he was a gymnast. Okay, so in terms of total physical, and I don't know how much did Ronnie. I don't think Ronnie was the type that beat up on David. I don't know how David became so bully like. So that's advanced psychology. There's probably a bunch of people you could ask privately to find out.
What level do you think? Because we were talking about. Well, okay, so let me start with this. What was your highest level achieved? I
think it's bullshit, but I got clear. I think it's bullshit because if you take that Dianetics book, the one with the volcano on the front, you take that book, you find out that this is just total bullshit nonsense. This is crap. There's no way people are like that. You can't get a perfect memory. That there are some people that have these. Like some professors have these remarkable brains where they can read a line and then they permanently remember that, and they can just look at a photograph in their brain of what they just read. And so, there are people that have eidetic, I believe it's called, memories. Okay, fine. But that's not the average person. You can't do the quack pseudotherapy and turn into this perfect eidetic soul that can go out of your body and have 360-degree visio. That's hallucination, and I don't believe. I'm sure you can improve a lot, and of course you can accumulate knowledge. And what do you call it? Muscle memory. I mean, and
photographic memory, and they could also have muscle memory if it's been repeated enough, where it just comes to you.
And then so I would say if you really want to get into the deeper discussion of that, and try to. If you I call it mind melding. If you could mind meld all of L. Ron Hubbard's ideas and all of his writings and everything into your head, I think, and then you scan through it for, let's say you didn't have AI as your alternative source of information about the universe, you would not want to have, or if you could, let's say you have an AI type of brain plus L. Ron Hubbard's subbrain. Then you could probably give him a good full assessment of his limitations. But I think all of the critical books by outsiders, starting in the 1950s, the best critical book on L. Ron Hubbard, I feel, is the one called Fads and Fallacies, written by Martin Gardner That's the all-time shortest, best book, which just has a chapter on Hubbard and Dianetics. And then it has a chapter in general about all of the other contemporary sort of pseudotherapy groups that existed in the mid 1950s, which Hubbard was a part of, and their characteristics of persons. And I think that's probably the best book that summarizes what the professional psychiatrists, scientists, and another great article, John Atack, of course, covers the whole. John Atack, A-T-A-C-K, is the known to be the living, probably best expert on Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard's history. He's written several books. His most famous one is called "Let's Sell These People a Piece of Blue Sky."
That's a good description. The reason I was actually asking that level question is because I think when we and you were talking the other day, I think you had said that David and even Tom Cruise aren't even at the highest levels of Scientology when it comes to knowing all of the knowledge of Scientology. They haven't actually reached that peak yet, or I don't know if they're even striving for it anymore.
True. And then I think another great thing, remember we talked about the Ouija board stuff, and we talked a little bit about Ingo Swann?
Yeah.
It's even common knowledge within Scientology. Some people come into Scientology and will believe strongly that they do have already very powerful spiritual powers of different sorts. And it's like, in fact, when you, I told you of the one person I was with who had already really believed that there was this higher spiritual plane where you talk directly with other spiritual personalities. And these spiritual personalities are merely involved in sort of like a really high level games that they engage in these higher spiritual planes. And they didn't get that from Scientology. They had that. So that's one of the things you kind of...
Well, and that's why I actually brought that up, is because I was talking about a CIA project that the government used to run by the name of Project Stargate. And what it was is there's a group of people in it, and they're best seers. Basically what they were doing is they were trying to remote view things. And they were operating at probably about a 40% success rate. At the highest levels, and they have retrieved downed military aircraft, ships, and the total cost for it over, I think it was either a year or 2 years, was something like $2 million. And so they called it a net negative, but they actually retrieved over, I think, $8 million in retrieval, like finding down ships, finding aircrafts and stuff like that, and actually being successful in retrieving those. And Ingo Swann and Joseph McMoneagle, Ingo Swann specifically, and I think Joseph McMoneagle was relaying that information behind the CIA's back to Scientology. And Ingo Swann even credited Scientology with some of the Dianetic techniques for why he was able to do some of those things. And I was like, well, it's weird that he credits, Scientology for giving him the tools to get to that point, and then still double crosses the CIA and goes, "Hey, I'm going to bring this back to L. Ron Hubbard." Like, you wouldn't expect that right away. And that's why we now have the Swan Institute nowadays. But
I don't think that he there wasn't. I don't believe that. I never encountered anything in any of LRH's, and I call him LRH because that's just the nickname it's embedded in my, conditioned into my still, semi-brainwashed Scientology. It'll never go away a lot of the ways I think and the words that I use when I think about this crap. But Hubbard, I don't believe, was still shopping for spiritual stuff from even Ingo or any of the other people that came in. Otherwise, we would have, and Ingo would have told it by now. He's passed away. But Ingo would have had conversations saying, yeah, Hubbard asked me, could I do this? Could I do that? Was I able to do this? And try to sort of like see if there was something that Ingo could help Hubbard do that would be like supernatural. Now, I want to give you a couple of good examples, real examples. The
Okay.
Hubbard, the meter that they use, and you immediately go to the right questions. You have to look at it scientifically. If this stuff is real and the spiritual stuff can be proven, that meter is kind of like a really good starting point. You want to use some kind of electronic device which is able to detect some sort of supernatural spiritual activity. Guess what? In one of the Scientology movies, they have what's called a beep meter. Beep as in beep, beep. And in one of the movies, they have a display of a supposed beep meter. I never saw a beep meter. Nobody ever knew in Scientology had ever seen the beep meter. But it was the meter that was set up across the room, and you're not touching it in any way. And supposedly a Scientologist, an Ingo Swann, or a Pat Preston, or one of these other ones that had supposedly powerful OT protection powers.
Pat Price, so that
Pat
we don't
Price,
get it
okay.
mixed. Well, because I want to ask about Vincent, aka Peter Moon, later, but
Okay.
there's a guy tied into him by the name of Preston Nichols, and I don't want any of that to get mixed up.
Right.
That they had any connection. But
I
yes,
probably
go
meant
on, Pat Price.
I probably
Yeah.
meant Pat Price. The beep meter was supposed to be able to be, you were able to beam your intention. And, Frank
Trigger it.
Zappa, you've heard of Frank Zappa?
Yeah.
Do you know the one album is called Billy the Mountain?
We have a famous poster that my uncle gives to like all of our kids in our family, and it's Frank Zappa sitting on the toilet in black and white, and I know
Okay.
Frank Zappa pretty well.
He made fun of L. Ron Hubbard because he has a character called Studebaker Hawk in the Billy the Mountain album, and Studebaker Hawk is in a phone booth or something like that, and he uses his L. Ron Hubbard intention to teleport somewhere. Okay, so because Hubbard, even on one of the lowest introductory courses, and I did the drills at the time that there's a whole separate introductory course called the blah blah, called the blah blah course, and it has the drills. It's the one you shout at an ashtray. Scientologists have the shouting.
Yeah. I've heard of this. Okay.
It's number 6, 7, 8, and 9. Of those, there's 4 drills you do there. There's 4 drills, and those drills are supposed to get you up to the point where you can use your intention and beam over to somebody else to take note of you. Like, people have these experiences of when a powerful, charming, sort of like like emotionally powerful person comes into a room and everybody turns and looks at them.
Yeah.
So those are the people that supposedly have this sort of beaming projection on them. Okay, so the beep meter in our movies in Scientology has a Scientologist standing there with his arms on his hips, and he projects over to the beep meter, and it beeps, and it beeps again, and it beeps again. And that's the kind of scientific testing that needs to be done to really show, are these people Ingo Swans? Can they make the meter beep? Can these OT 8 Scientologists make the meter beep? We don't have a beep meter, so we're just lying. We're just got it. This unfortunately, even like on the Ouija, I was looking up after we talked on the Ouija board. How is it that the Ouija board, like you mentioned, the paddle moving with nobody's hands on it? I've only have one similar Scientology experience, that I'll just give you that, not to rain on your Ouija board thing. But when I was doing we have these what are called these. You saw the movie The Master?
Oh no, I haven't.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, yeah.
Joaquin. Okay.
He was
In the
also
fi-
in a cult.
in the final scene of that movie, he's walking back and forth with the master, with Seymour. What's his name? Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, and Seymour Hoffman is playing L. Ron Hubbard, and then Joaquin is one of these early, sort of like followers of Hubbard, and they're doing one of the walk around Hubbard processes. When I watched that part of the movie, I was getting, we call it restimulated. I mean, it was just too much bad news to me. I don't like that stuff. But anyways, I was doing one of these walk around processes in my early days when I was working in Clearwater, when I was still on the road to becoming a good practitioner, a good auditor. And the most supernatural thing that I had was we're doing this process. Remember, I showed you this, like the list of all these commands.
Yeah.
One of them was walk over to that object, put your hand on that object, hold it still. Did you hold it still? And then you choose another object and you walk around the room. It's called the hold it still. So I wanted to fuck with my guy. I wanted to fuck with the guy that I was running this on. So this is in Florida, in Clearwater, and you have these nice, cool breezes, and your curtains are moving. And he knew he picked up and said, "Oh, you're gonna fuck with me, aren't you?" I said, "Sure, let's try it." So, because he was feeling pretty good, and I thought, okay, let's see if he can do it. So I did it. We did it on the moving curtain. The moving curtain is moving with the breeze, and you know how breezes are. They come and go, and they move your curtains, and sometimes they'll move the curtains. So I waited until the curtain was nicely swaying, and I said, "Okay, walk over to that curtain." Okay, and then with your hands, there's a touching, hold it still, and then there's the non-touching, hold it still. So the non-touching, hold it still, I think, is probably more comparable to, remember what we talked about, causing the hairs on your arms to already go up and cause your arms to warm up. So if you do the non-touching, hold it still process, that would be another instance of testing whether the Hubbard processes actually can get a person up to the level of actually doing something supernatural telekinetically. And so I did it on this guy, and the curtain stopped. The curtain stopped. He did it, and it was right at the moment that I gave him the command, and either he brought it to stop, or it just was a complete coincidence of the universe. The curtain stopped moving, and then the next thing he said is, "I feel like I'm in the center of the room." And we're like 6 feet away from the center of the room. And you know about the people that have the out of the body experience, the rep in the corner, the da-da-da-da, the da-da-da. So I'd put him in a state of rapture or whatever, so that he was perceiving from the center of the room 6 feet away from us, just after he had telekinetically stopped the window, the curtain from moving. Now that would be, so that's the kind of, if you could do that scientifically over and over and over with the Hubbard processes, out of all these volumes, you could probably pick out the ones which would most be similar to, a hard test like the beat meter or the hold it still process, non-touching hold it still. You're not touching to hold it still. You're seeing if you can hold it still with that. Now that would be the kind of thing that I think that would be scientifically. And then if you could get it up to like 90, 100%, or 100%, 100%, like people can, like you can get your hands warm no matter what. It's like riding the bicycle. Once you learn how to ride the bicycle, that's it. It isn't like, it's not spotty. So that was the way I would tend to compare, what's his name? Ingo. He's not 100%. He's not ride the bicycle.
Well, and this is, and when I was telling you about that Ouija board experience, that was immediately the test we did, because like I said, me and one other person, and I'll reference her, but I won't say her name. She's a very interesting person. She only dreams in black and white, and none of the people in her dreams have faces. It's all just blank. and we for some reason have this weird spiritual connection when we're together, and we're the only ones that are able to like hover it over the pendulum or whatever you want to call it on a Ouija board. And so what we were doing is to go, oh, okay, well maybe that is just sheer luck. So we grabbed two other people and put their hands on it, and we were asking questions that only we knew the answer to, and it would spell out the answer, and there was no way these people on the, like, we were asking questions that neither one of these two people on the board would know. And that's when we were like, all right, let's close this thing up. Like, I don't want to play with this thing anymore, because it took me a long time to realize I wasn't playing with something. Like, it was actually, that was a realization for me that it was a little bit more serious than I thought it was. Like, I had dove into some side of spirituality where I felt like I was a little in too deep, and I wanted to back out a little bit and say, okay, how did I get to this point? And yeah, and I told you I have a healthy relationship with it now. I don't just think I'm magical, but I noticed that there are some things that happened around me that I still can't explain to this day. But yeah, it's weird stuff, and I do think people like Ingo Swann and Justin McMonagle have something there, but it's not, like you said, it's not replicable enough times where they can go, oh, it's scientific and we can point to it. And I still can't point to my experience. I can't go, this is exactly what happened. It's testable. I can do it every time. Conditions have to be right. Like, for some reason with Ouija boards, that you're supposed to use them during what are considered dead hours, which is from like midnight to 2 in the morning. You can't have any electronics on. You want all the windows closed. You don't want any breezes coming in. You don't want, the AC going. And apparently all of these things make a difference in spirituality, I guess, and if they decide to talk to you or not. And you were talking about a clearing process, where not clearing Scientology process, but like helping these spirits like move on. And that's what I was talking to you about related to a Ouija board. And there's weird rules with a Ouija board where you actually have to ask, you have two questions you have to ask right away. First is, do you know that you have passed away? Because sometimes you'll be talking to somebody or something that doesn't know that they are deceased and that they are a spirit. And I've had times where people or spirits would argue, I keep saying people, things would argue with me about it, or I've had times where they just completely leave, like after asking that question, and then all of a sudden, whatever it was that you're talking to is gone. Like, you just told them some information, and they were just like, what? And they like left, and like didn't have any more questions. And then some of them recognize it right away, and then you can move on to your second question of, did you have a message for me or anybody else in the room? Like, and you're supposed to have intention towards certain things. And it reminded me a lot of an e-meter in general, because it's and auditing, because you are asking direct questions. You're looking for some kind of movement, if you will, and then you direct towards that movement of, okay, now let's go this way. All right, what's the message? And I've gotten in some really, really dark conversations. I'll tell you this one. I didn't tell you this one the other day. This one still blows my mind to this day. I have a best friend who joined wrestling with me around the same time. We both started wrestling when we were about 3 or 4 years old. And his name's Josh. And one day, me and his girlfriend, and it was daytime. And that, depending on who's doing it with us, we can do it during the daytime. And so we were able to do it in the daytime. We pulled out the Ouija board and we were talking to it. And then all of a sudden, somebody jumps on the board and spells out the name Grimm. And they said, my name's Grimm. I have a message for Josh. And told us that there was going to be an accident. And there was going to be a death involved. And sure enough, my best friend got into an accident, and the person was crossing the road on a 4-wheeler with no lights on, and there was a car accident, and the person lost its life. My friend John, I had forgotten all about this situation, because when we were in the moment, we go, oh, Grimm, ha ha ha, we closed the board up and just called it a day. he calls me a couple months later. This happened on Christmas Eve of that year. He called me a couple months later and was like, "Hey, do you remember when we talked to Grimm?" And I said something to him. I remember specifically what I said to him. I said, "It didn't matter if you knew that was the exact instant he was telling you about, because you wouldn't have been able to change the outcome. They could have given you no information that would have stopped that event from happening." You know what I mean? That was, regardless, that was a perpetual thing that apparently had to happen. I don't know why, but I don't think he could have gotten any future knowledge back then when we were on the board to the time when the incident happened, where he could have changed that incident. And so I was like, you can't fret on that conversation and, ain't like bring cause to that, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
You can't let that be the cause of, maybe you didn't hear an answer right or something like that. I was like, well, I mean, maybe we did laugh it off, but at the same time, you weren't going to get any answers that would change said situation. Even if it was all nonsense and maybe we all made it up in our heads. Maybe that's possible. But at the same time, like, I had forgotten all about the situation, and then I could tell he was stirring about it. And yeah, that situation just threw me off so much. And it got... we've had some really strange encounters when it came to using Ouija boards, and that's what eventually... It was the blonde-headed girls that eventually made me put down the Ouija board that I told you about.
Yeah. I thought a lot about this. It's something you want to keep as a hobby and get on with your life. Make sure you're stable in life. You have a profession you enjoy. Keep it as a hobby. Even the people today that I communicate with, who are willing to delve deep into all the writings. I have a 17-year-old daughter now. It's never been in my house as long as I've had a family. Good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how long I put it away for, because I just worry about the people around me, and even if it is a real thing, I don't want to influence the people around me with that kind of stuff. So healthy separation.
One thing I learned when even we were in Scientology, training to dodge the draft. We were doing training on ourselves in late 1970s, and we all had to do what's called the minister's course in order to become like a legitimate religion minister, which I don't feel, of course, it's like stolen valor in the field of religion. Okay, Scientology can be a spiritualism group. I think they do have to make some changes to be a religion, to be comparable to like a genuine, because like when my father passed away.
And I agree with you on that, because I don't think the majority of Scientology is teaching the spirituality side. I think the majority of it is more of a self-improvement or business.
Business of orgs. It's truly, Hubbard wanted his little beehive. So I consider myself mainly in my career in Scientology a cult bureaucrat training department staff member. I was mostly, and they have too many cult bureaucrats. They got too many bees in the beehive. I mean, like most people go in there for spiritual things, and they don't want to go through all the paper pushing stuff. They just want to get down to brass tacks on the spiritual stuff. So what do you want to do? Man, you can just go straight through these books for a couple of months, find the processes that interest you, do them yourself if you really wanted to. You know what I mean? You don't have to like filter everything through all the rules and regulations, which I think, and I'm an expert on all of Hubbard's own violations of his own earlier regulations.
Yeah.
The whole cult bureaucracy is a big violation of one of his 1950 writings. I bring that up all the time. Doesn't mean a hill of beans, because today we got this big operation, and they have the big operation. It's all based on Hubbard's big mistake, which has even been brought up in, I like the new religion academics and the sociologists, the legit ones that study Scientology. They noticed this by the 1950s. Hubbard had written enough of his green rules regulations crap, which then made it look like, Like you have a little boat and then you got a major boat. And once you get a major boat going, it's going to keep going. You can't stop it. Like when they shut off the engines coming into Manhattan, they shut them off like 5 and 10, or they used to have to shut them off way out at sea because it's going to coast and you can't stop those big boats.
You got momentum going.
Oh, the momentum. So unfortunately, he built that big culture bureaucracy, which has this big momentum. So when I tell people, I always try to tell people, just keep it as a hobby. Just, you're the boss. Don't let anybody be your boss on your study of Scientology. Maintain, you're in control of your adult education. You know what I mean? And that was one of the cautions that I received before going into Scientology. You're going to be giving up your power of self-education in Scientology, not unless you just really stiff arm them and keep them off, because they're going to try to do like they did with you. They're going to peg you. They're going to put you in a category. They're going to run you on what they think they can get out of you. You become a coin. There's a word in the training courses, which is people are just resources to them to use for their whole big, lumbering bureaucracy, which is just kind of moving along, even despite. And then Miscavige is kind of like the leader, which Hubbard never really intended. Hubbard wanted his various councils in these various upper units to be the ones who each did their strategic planning. They would coordinate their strategic planning for going forward, because Hubbard didn't want a single individual to run the movement. But that's all, in my opinion, a massive amount of paper pushing. If you're even into Ouija board spiritualism or whatever, or any appreciation for any of the spiritual stuff, being able to raise the hairs on your arms at any moment, going into rapture, going through the jhana steps of the Pali Canon, putting your mind like in these total trance-like states of the upper jhanas of Buddhism. Just keep it as a hobby. If it makes the rest of your life good, don't become fanatical about it. It's your hobby. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
okay, but anyways,
let's bring it back. I want to, because one of the last Scientology related things we were talking about was with Ingo Swann and Pat Price and Joseph McMoneagle. Did you ever work with Vincent?
Vincent Barbaric, yes. Well, no,
Yeah.
I didn't work with him. He would, at the time that he was there, I moved into the same office, which he worked in what was called the LRH personal office. He worked in the LRH personal office. That would be like your top entourage people with L. Ron Hubbard. Peter Moon, Vince, he was in the letter answering department for L. Ron Hubbard, a special unit.
So for anybody watching, I've done an interview on my channel with the author named Peter Moon, who is also Vincent Barbary, and I kind of went over that in our interview, that he was a former Scientologist. He doesn't really like talking about it very much, but it's probably just because he's talked about it. I could only imagine he's done thousands of interviews, and he wants to get into more of his book stuff, and he also doesn't go by that name, so he goes by Peter. And I don't know, would you consider him a higher up than you because he was immediately around Elron? I knew he was on the boat with him.
I would, just because of his experiential track, what he was allowed to be privy to. When you work in that office, the LRH personal office, you're sitting either in the next office or the same office space with the people that are receiving orders from L. Ron Hubbard. And what would happen when you're even he was always in this sort of letter writing and answering sort of secretarial type of function. I don't know if you know, but like the kings of France, they have an entourage. The people who work in the entourage, they're scrubbing the back of the king and they're putting on the shoes of the king. So he was writing the letters and answering the letters for the king. of Scientology. Okay,
So is
and
he
then-
like one of those people that would be like writing to L. Ron Hubbard's ex-wife, or doing the correspondence between that, or
Not on his
or is
own,
that a
not
whole
on-
different group?
a whole different group. The Guardian's
Okay.
office, the Mary Sue Hubbard team of people would figure out that kind of stuff. At that time that Vince was there. At the time Vince was there, I would say the most important person around him was a lady named Vicki Livingston, who was, her position was L. Ron Hubbard Accounts.
What was her name? Vicky what?
Vicki Livingston,
Okay.
and her job was L. Ron Hubbard Accounts. She was L. Ron Hubbard's money keeper tracker person.
Okay. So when before they did get tax exemption, and when the money was being moved around to keep it out of the eyes of the government, I assume that's what was going on.
Yeah, and then he was on the Apollo. So, and because of where his office was physically located, because of the when you're doing letter answering for L. Ron Hubbard, it's a very high privilege. You have to be literate. You have to make your letter answer sound like it's coming from L. Ron Hubbard. It gets side checked and actually went at different periods on the ship. The letters going back to the people, and Hubbard had a communication policy with all people in Scientology. Said, if anybody wants to write me, they can write me, and they'll get an answer from me. And so when L. Ron Hubbard died, of course, everybody felt really sad that they couldn't write to Hubbard anymore. And it was a big deal. Now, people that were on the Apollo around Hubbard, there was a period right towards the end in the 70s or even the early 80s when Hubbard wasn't available, and he couldn't do the side checking of the letters that came to him. And
So there was still correspondence going on from the teams that were responding with the letters anyway?
they did.
Okay.
And then I knew the lady, and I had a great deal of respect, and she's been interviewed as well on the Peeling the Onion channel. She was kind of like a, what do you call it, a role model, or a, what do you call the people that you look up to and you go like, wow, she knows
Yeah,
what
role
she's
model.
talking about. Yeah, I, when you're a young Sea member coming up and you see some people that look impressive and and then if you work for the office of LRH, in the personal office of L. Ron Hubbard, those people are having interaction with L. Ron Hubbard. So you take what they say seriously. And guess what? The Commodore's messengers, Janice Brady, she was in the Commodore messengers. They're the ones right outside of L. Ron Hubbard's door, and he shouts out messenger, and then they come running in, these little girls and young men.
And that's what Shelley started doing, right?
Yes,
She was
Shelley.
she was a messenger as well.
He was a message runner.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're pretty close now. Do you strategically understand everything? But you get by osmosis. What does L. Ron Hubbard prioritize? What does he deal with in the day? Like you're there. If you're watching what happens, you'd see which people come and go into his office. You see all these different things you get, and you're running messages to the top people. And at the time on the ship, there was L. Ron Hubbard at the top. He's the Commodore. And then he has his Commodore aides. So in these volumes, there's 7 divisions. Guess how many aides there were? 7. So there's an aide for every single one of the green volume administrative divisions. So my first wife, she was first the money lady. This is why I know about Vicki
The
Livingston.
financial side.
Yeah,
okay.
I know the financial people because, I knew at least for that time period, and then I knew the person who came along after Vicky, and then that whole function then shifted over to author services because it was illegal. The IRS was saying, "Sorry, Hubbard, you can't get tax exemption. You got this LRH personal office of these Seward people, and they're doing this stuff for you. You can't have your personal stuff being handled by church." It's just not. It's like it violates IRS tax stuff, annulment or some stuff. I don't even know. I'm not a law expert, but all I know is that I lived through the transition from the end of the Apollo, because I only came into the Sea organization when they had moved to land in Clearwater. So I was there in Clearwater from December 1975 till '83 when I left, and then I came out to LA. And in those 6 years that I was there, from what was that 8 years in Clearwater, my first wife, she was first the banking officer for the main Clearwater spiritual retreat for the Mecca, for where the auditing for the class 12s. So she was meeting with the people that the paper pushers who would get the money and the sales.
So was that already known as flag out there by that time, or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was trying to figure out when you were saying that. Oh, okay. The flag came directly from the Apollo.
Came from the Apollo, and then the management people took over in a couple of the buildings. Paper pushers took over a couple of the buildings, and then the Fort Harrison. That's where the class 12.
The hotel.
Yeah, the hotel. And then the public stayed in the hotel. And then they take their elevators down to the ground floor, and then they'd walk down near the swimming pool where Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, were sitting there in the picture, when they wrote the song Satisfaction. So they'd walk right by those lawn chairs where they weren't there at the same time. They were there years earlier. But when we bought the hotel, that's the hotel where they came up with the song, I think, Satisfaction, I guess. I can't remember, something like that. Anyways,
have you okay, what I'm trying to figure out is, did they have like there's so many subsidiaries, there's a drug related one, there's a sciences one now. Did those all develop off of this other one that for when they weren't tax exempt yet? Did they start making these other versions that way they could bring money in different ways and it all wasn't going to Scientology?
It was going
the purpose?
It was going to. There's a good, pretty rough explanation on the Peeling the Onion interviews. Some of the money was going to fund the Guardian's office, which was the Mary Sue wing. So they got L. Ron Hubbard, and he's got the Sea Org. Mary Sue has got what's called the Guardian's office. The Guardian's office were the ones that went to jail for infiltrating the government, right?
Okay.
And then today, within the Sea Org, they all were forced to become Sea Org in 1982. Up till 1982, they were not Sea Org members, but they were very dedicated to Mary Sue. And Mary Sue, in some ways, was not as fanatical as Hubbard. She wanted the people in the Guardian's office to live normal lives. She allowed people to always take Sunday off, and if they did good, they could have Saturday and Sunday off. I mean, so she, in the Hubbard, no way. You only got one day off every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So he was way more strict. But the people that were fanatically supportive of Mary Sue, they were at an equal level of fanaticism towards her. They would die for her. You know what I mean? So yeah. So it's a really funny thing. And then she was super loyal to Hubbard and bit the bullet and went to prison for him when she could have pulled him right in too.
And what year did you say you left Clearwater? Was it 83?
83.
And
I
have you?
Los Angeles.
I was gonna say, have you ever revisited it since then?
No, but I've thought about doing it a lot. And I thought I'd love to go to Clearwater and set up a little, like the little tourist shop, and it would be the Xenu swag and gift shop, and sell beach towels with the word Xenu on them and Xenu umbrellas so that when you walk by a Scientology building and their cameras are looking down on you, they have to see the word Xenu, and that word is so taboo, they have to delete it off their recordings.
So I was watching. So I just went down there probably a month ago. That was the last time I was in Clearwater, and I didn't realize how much property they actually have. I'm pretty sure I walked around one of Tom Cruise's penthouses, and we were recording it. I'm pretty sure I got video footage of that. But then when you start slowly going outside of the main strip, away from the Harrison Hotel, once you start getting farther away from that, they have all these different named companies, but all of the buildings are painted the exact same. They're these soft, weird colors, and then they have just different names on them. You no longer see Scientology designs on them. They have, all of a sudden, it's like the drug related ones, it's the science related ones, and you can. Oh, it's so strange. I didn't realize how much they actually own in Clearwater. And I don't even know if you could even set up shop out there nowadays. Honestly, me just with a camera was such a big deal walking around. Like you, I remember walking by one door. They saw me pass with a camera. The door was wide open with a welcome sign in it. By the time I came and turned back this way, the doors were swung shut, and I could hear a button lock. And all of a sudden, the door's locked. The sign's back inside. They closed things up immediately. It was so weird watching it happen. And I was like, oh, okay. They're just very, very private. And then they'll have people have concerts like on the beach out there because they don't own the actual beach venue there, I guess. And they'll have concerts that are from outside of Scientology. And it's weird because everybody's got to drive through that to get through the concerts. And it's like right between the flag organization, and then you'll have like this fenced in gate next to you with fake ivy all over it. And it's just such a strange surrounding. Everything just looks so, I don't know. It looks so fake. And I don't even know how to, and everything's a facade. I'd peek in windows, and then all of a sudden the curtains would go closed real quick, and it was the weirdest thing I've ever encountered when it came to just having a camera outside in a public street. And a lot of people say the police don't really respond to a lot depending on where it's at in Clearwater. And I don't know if they're in the pockets of the police or how that works or how much control they actually have in the area. It's kind of creepy. That's why it would be interesting to see somebody like you's perspective, who was there when the Apollo first came to shore, and how much has changed since then. Because you'd be a good walk around interview, like walking through town and being like, well, this used to look like this. They didn't own it this far, and all of a sudden now they own 94% of the town or something like that. It's not 94, but they still had a. What was that?
I've given a lot of thought and some long-range advice to the citizens. It's very difficult to get the message across. Patience. I think the new religious academics, the ones who say that the change which a sort of one of these cultishly, I mean, a normal person knows what cult means. So if you consider that, like, all of the unusual sort of behavior could be more normalized, but there are a couple of key things that have to change, and it unfortunately goes to the interpretation of their doctrines. You know, everyone knows about their shunning. They're an extremist shunning organization. They need to dial back their shunning. Now, there's been a breakthrough just several days ago. Mark Bunker, who is one of the top suppressive persons in Clearwater, shook hands and graciously received a handshake from Trish Duggan. Trish Duggan is like the billionaire wife of Bob Duggan, who's made probably some of the largest donations to Scientology. And for her to even have shook the hand graciously of Mark Bunker, depending on the full context, if we had a video of that, that's a milestone. If that kind of behavior trickles down to all of the Scientologists, if they become more normal, because the other thing that I see about the downtown area, not only a lot of the businesses are owned by Scientologists, but if they extend their shunning down, it's going to hurt business. So they have to be like Trish Duggan was the other day. They have to put on the normal tolerance that a traditional religion does. So the change has to come from Scientology's side. But how do we as citizens ask a religion that's acting too culty to be more normal, come out and offer us some free pizza, make friends with us, like...
It's weird that they can't figure that out internally, No. Like the separation of families doesn't look good from an outsider's perspective. Yeah. Not letting parents raise their own kids looks weird from an outsider's perspective. Or when somebody becomes an SP or a suppressive person, they can't to have their family be forced to write things on, about them that they can no longer communicate, or I don't know. I think they could do it in a way where they would no longer look as much like a cult. I mean, you might look like a pyramid scheme still, as long as you're still collecting money the same way.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
you can
but
do, I consider
and you can
it
do
woo.
that.
You can do your woo spiritualism. You can do your exorcism because Flag is the top exorcism location on planet Earth. There's more exorcism of ghosts that goes on in Clearwater than anywhere in the history.
That's
of
because the
planet
Catholic
Earth.
Church took a break on it. That's because the Catholic
No,
Church took a break.
they don't do high volume. It on the OT7, and there's OT3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. On OT7,
Okay.
you're doing high volume exorcism for at least 2 years. So every day you're popping off like 30 to 100 ghosts. You're freeing hundreds of thousands of ghosts by the time you get up to OT7. So
Was that because the understanding is each Thetan that you're holding on to is a spirit?
no, it's holding on to you, and you have to.
But I'm
discover
saying,
it.
is it like, because when we think of exorcism outside of Scientology, what you think of is
Yeah.
somebody's possessed
Yeah.
by a spirit, not
Yeah, evil spirit.
millions of or hundreds of thousands of them are all over me. You know,
Yes.
that's a whole different type of exorcism in the
Yeah.
eyes of what is an exorcism.
Good, and that is truly true, and that you're absolutely right. In fact, that's why I like talking to someone like you, because you understand that. So it's a lot easier to talk to normal people who have some kind of spiritualism background. I have found since leaving Scientology, I've been out since 2003. I've had my best conversations with people that are mediums, people that read minds, that do have the little palm readers and stuff like that. They have a better understanding of Scientology than average citizens.
Yeah. Well, it's because I can't think of anything else that would draw you into Scientology besides the little bit of spiritual stuff that sounds interesting. Like, I mean, I don't know what else would bring you in. Like, if you're
When I
that
was-
messed up, like, I don't think
I was-
spending all of your money to get this self-help book is going to be faster than buying any other self-help book that you can get for free.
That was a big mistake. I think all of these intro they're called the introductory dissemination routes of Scientology. They aren't
Yeah.
going to work. They're not the right people. You don't want people like that. You want people already that believe in past lives and future lives, that already are open to that and open to the idea of spirits, and then even of different kinds of ghosts, because the ghosts which you do your exorcism on in Scientology are ones that are all in a deep amnesia trance, and you have to kind of wake them up, and then you wake them up, and then you do your telepathic therapy with them, and you free them, and then they leave you alone. And if they were leaking any of their engrams onto you, you don't have those engrams anymore, because Scientology believes you have two levels of the case: your own past life engramic case, and then you have the case which your crusted souls are leaking onto you. And what you do is you free all those off of you, and then while you free them, their case is supposed to go off of them. So then none of their case, their engramic case, is hitting you. So that's why I look at it today when I studied the Pali Canon, when they have like 30 or so levels of gods above the human state, and that and then when you get into the details of L. Ron Hubbard's, the final moments of his life, of telling the man that was at the ranch with him that he planned to go circle a star as a pure soul. In other words, he would eject out of the body as he died as a soul, and then he would consciously run in a circle or an oval pattern around the star as soul rejuvenation for a pure soul. And that was one of the out of the body processes. I showed you like that books of all the thousands and thousands of commands.
Yeah.
Well, at Clearwater today, in their big new building, the Flag building, they have a whole floor where a human being runs around in a circle, and that mimics the process that is done
They
in
have
our
a person.
past. Yes,
They have a
as
person
pure
constantly running around in a circle.
Well, you do it within the confines of not harming your human body, but you
Gotcha.
do it, and it's supposed to put you in It's supposed to key you out of
Oh, you're supposed to do it as a trans like state.
yeah until the whatever your because remember your engrams cause certain types of mental pictures to be half restimulated and supposedly active on you. So you can do the running in circles. It's called the running in cause resurgence rundown. That's its new name, but it used to be just called the running programs. I like to call it the running in circles program because that makes fun of it a little bit, because you're running in circles. But a lot of people have like the second wind. You run if you run a lot. Eventually, sometimes you'll have a second wind phenomena. I've had that before I got into Scientology. I always
It reminded me of like a rocking, like meditative state that I've seen people in,
Yeah.
where they're just kind of like, trying to. I don't know why people do it, but Mud Rabbit had something interesting. She brought up Leah Remedy, and that's actually what always reminds me of the Thetan story. Did you say she reached OT level 3? Is that where that you hear about Thetans and they explain
Yeah.
that to you? Okay, so when and go check out Leah Remedy when she talks about this. She basically talks about she brings a briefcase. And it's sealed up and it's locked, and she's got to go take it to this other building for somebody to unlock it for her. And then they pull her out a piece of paper, and she's got to draw her body. And then, all right, now draw a circle. I don't remember if it was a circle or eyeballs. And she starts drawing these circles, and she draws a couple on her body, and she hands it back to the person. And they're, no, that's not enough. And they hand her it again, and she has to draw more and more. Then she looks at it again and goes, nope, that's not enough, even more. And then that's what they eventually tell her are these Thetans. And then when I was talking to Chuck the other day, he was basically telling me there's hundreds of thousands of these Thetans attached to everyone. If I'm understanding correctly, and that's what made me think about the exorcism side. It's like, well, yeah, if they think they're getting 30 off a day, on one person, that's just diabolical numbers.
Yeah, they like to brag about Hubbard, the most published author in the world. I like to joke and say, yeah, Scientology is also the Guinness Book of World Records unofficial largest exorcism group on the planet. They've exorcised more ghosts than anyone.
Yeah,
And that's true, at least in their minds. I personally, again, I believe it's woo.
yeah, which is understandable. I mean, I do think possession's a real thing. I just don't think their form of what they're talking about as possession is a thing, because I feel like you could also shed it a different way. So you gave me a few. What? Oh yeah, 1 second.
You need to go?
No, I'm fine. 1 second. Ugh. Sorry. Wife asked me for something. So what was I gonna ask? Oh, because you gave me a few. You called them ripcord words, and I think it would be a fun thing to talk about to close this up. Because I would love to do a part 2 with you, but I want to end it at like a decent time, and then depending on the feedback we get on this one, then we can do kind of a follow up one. Because I do want to go over a lot of because the fact that you call yourself an atheist Buddhist is interesting to me, and I like how you talk about Buddhism, and I would like to get into that more. But tell us, in case people haven't seen South Park, what is the story of the name that you have across your shirt there? What's the
Xenu.
story of Xenu that we need to know about?
Can you see the whole thing? This
I
is
can
the
just
mess-
see the Xenu part. Xenu caused the wall of fire.
If you can remember that is your ripcord sentence. I put the ripcord sentence on. I have a lot of T-shirts that say this because this is your ripcord get out of jail Scientology card phrase. So I'll explain it. So Xenu's the space alien from the Markab Confederacy, which is outer space. There actually is a star out there. It's called Markab. And there's a bunch of other stars around there, and then there's I don't know how many planets out there. Now this is what L. Ron Hubbard thinks. L. Ron Hubbard was a science fiction guy, right? And the billions of people from those planets were brought to Earth by Xenu.
Xenu.
So Xenu's the bad guy. He's the bad guy. He would be like the
Because you said the
space-
planet was overpopulated or
Yeah.
something. Okay.
So he brought a whole bunch of humanoids, their actual bodies, here to Earth. They were either dead or they were dead with the souls still inside the bodies. The souls hadn't decided to eject out of the body yet. So he brought. Apparently, the logistics of what happened is impossible. It's impossible to bring billions of people here from the distance of where Markrab is to here without some kind of advanced civilization. When you do the math in physics, it's just impossible. And then to bring them in these DC-8 look-alike space planes, which Hubbard said that's what they use, that's impossible too. So immediately it sounds like a science fiction story. So Leah Remini was very correct in disbelieving it immediately. It's just impossible. So you have to kind of go with the flow. That's a phrase, like just kind of go with it. Okay, so some alien guy brought a whole bunch of...
So did she even get the Xenu story?
Yeah,
Leah Remini?
She did. I didn't, but I can explain it a little bit better because I
Okay.
don't think the Scientologists are crippled in how to talk about it. Hubbard never talked about it properly. Look, when you watch the South Park episode, it sounds like just an outlandish cartoon. Doesn't sound like it's even possible anybody could believe this. You could believe it if you look at it in terms of that all humanoids, us humanoids like this, and throughout human history, a lot of people have believed that we are souls inside of our body, in that we leave the body when the body dies and then seek out a baby body and then go in the baby body and then have a new life, like the reincarnation idea or the transmigration of souls. Scientology is a sort of tailor-made where we believe, or Scientologists believe, that you leave one body and when you die. And there was a period when Hubbard earlier believed that you went to outer space Venus, and they have an implant station there where your soul is like re-educated with a bunch of false information, and then you're shot back to the United States, and then to a couple of places on Earth, and then you seek out a new baby body. There's a whole, but that's not necessarily stress, but the way Hubbard talks about it is so kind of sketchy, and over the history of him talking about Scientology. So it always gets complicated when you try to talk about it. So I just cut to the chase. They believe you're a soul. They believe we're in a human body, and we got extra ghosts stuck on our body. Now, how they got here isn't going to make any sense, because the way Hubbard explains it, there's no way to make it make sense.
Yeah.
other than to go with the flow and say that some evil space leader on another planet said, "Man, we got too many people here. We are overpopulated." And then if you're all Hubbard, you hate the IRS because you've been cheating the IRS all your life by tax dodger, because he's just like a serial tax dodger all his life, I'm sure. So from that point of view, tax dodger Hubbard, injects into the Xenu story that it was that people were told to come in for a tax audit on Markab, or at least on the old planets, and then they were like captured, and then they got a needle in the neck. They got a needle in the neck to sort of freeze them.
Was it like the sedation or what was
billions, hundreds of billions of people? Yeah, on multiple planets were then all gathered up, put on spaceships, and then flown here to Earth, and then their bodies, their frozen bodies, which still had soul in them.
This is the part that didn't make sense to me. Their
doesn't.
frozen bodies are put into a volcano.
Here's the thing. Remember, it kind of makes sense if you believe in spiritualism. Like, some ghosts will hang around their grave where their body was. So and then some ghosts will hang around inside of a frozen body, because there are some people that walk into a morgue and they go like, "Man, I still feel like the guy's in there, like the person's in the body." That kind of. Okay, so that's how you can kind of go with the flow. So somehow a bunch of bodies were brought here to planet Earth. Xenu is the guy. So whether his really name was Xenu or what, or how many times it came, but this is why Scientologists are real real suckers for like the ancient history, millions of years ago history of Earth being inhabited by other space civilizations. And when I was in Scientology, I ran into countless. Have you heard about the civilization called Mu or MU, Mu, the Mu
Yeah.
civilization?
Yeah. I heard
Okay,
about the
cool.
Mu civilization, the Atlanteans,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's just dial it back millions of years, because if Earth's been around a billion years, you got a lot of millions of years to play around with.
Yeah.
People coming here and dumping stuff here. And Hubbard said crazy things along the way in a bunch of his lectures, because he's constantly throwing out these sort of science fiction themed things. So anyways, go with the flow. Okay, so our body's encrusted with Satan. So that's the way I look at it. So if I'm going to be a loyal Scientologist, and I can, and I'm trying to defend my religion beliefs are, we try to get rid of case. We're mainly about getting rid of your engrams, talk therapy, of all those books I showed you. Remember those 4 volumes of like
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of commands? Those make up all the steps to do the bottom to the top, with a lot of exceptions. I mean, there's the class 12. I didn't give you the class 12 commands. Those are in another volume, which I can tell you where to find it if you want. But to get you all, you can get the ones that'll like pop you out of the body. I tried to show you roughly where the one was, where the guy that I got to end up in the center of the room, and he stopped the curtains from waving. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. If you're going with the flow, you kind of go with the flow that your body's encrusted with these things that Xenu dropped here. So then they don't like to talk about all the mechanics of Xenu.
So did Xenu? Where do the nukes come in, and how do these thetans get out of the volcanoes?
So be a spiritualist here. Look at it from a spiritualist. You believe the soul leaves the body, and you believe that you talking and me listening are the soul. We are the souls. So when our body dies, we leave. We float out of the body, or we instantly appear. Whether we telekinetically transport ourselves someplace, or how we either float away or we decide. But in the Xenu story on South Park, the Xenu had big the space ribbon around Earth, and there was like, it goes right straight into science fiction here. They collected all the little souls on the ribbon, and then the ribbon of souls, all these hundreds of billions of souls, are then fed into these, just like it shows on South Park, these like sort of like telepathic movie stations. When then, like, I try to remember the movie Total Recall, where Arnold Schwarzenegger is getting the false memories implanted. Well, you don't have a body. You're just a plain old soul, kind of like they make fun of it on the South Park thing. And you're sitting in the little chair, and you're getting your implants, and you get implants for 36 and a half days. Hubbard says, who knows whether it was like however long it was. You get implanted until you're like really dumb, and then those souls kind of like float around like little sperms, but they can't leave Earth's atmosphere. They're still here. And then as humanity, as evolution occurs and human body forms, they're dumb enough that, well, a lot of the souls cluster into clusters, and then they go down, and then they get stuck on human form. So,
well, it kind of made me wonder if Scientologists are scared to be around volcanoes because they might pick up more thetans from just being in the vicinity of volcanoes. Like, I don't know how that works.
He said something very similar during one of the classes on the Apollo, when he's lecturing the highest level practitioners of Scientology, and one of them drops something. He says, "Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm talking about really spooky, suppressive stuff, and bad stuff happened on the island where he discovered the secrets, which is I forget what the name of that, Madeira. It's one of the Portuguese islands near the Canary Islands, south of the Azores in the Atlantic Ocean, off the coast of Portugal. I think it was at Madeira was where he supposedly discovered the Xenu story, and then that Xenu brought all the humanoids here, mass murdered them. The souls got captured again by Xenu on the ribbon, then sent into these movie theaters and got implanted with the bad ideas like Total Recall, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, so that they got totally mixed up on who they are. They got all these bad ideas about everything, so that those bad ideas are what they're leaking really badly into us. We're covered with them. And that's why we have to get exercise off, because humanity today on Earth is dramatizing like a puppet all of these false memories which Xenu implanted in us. So yes, so wherever you go, which is going to re-stimulate you about that, yeah, that's the Xenu. So if you know Xenu, I make a zillion comments on YouTube, and I usually give 2 or 3 lines to say. So if somebody wants to be like a little bit of an activist, shut down one of the stress test operations on the streets in a city where Scientology set them up, a person who knows a little bit of the Xenu story can shut down one of the stress tests just by going up and asking, is it true Xenu caused the wall of fire? And then they'll go white in the face. That's taboo for them to know. And then if you talk about yeah. So the one word is Xenu, the other word.
Have you ever crossed a person that was on a high enough level that they could talk to you about it?
In fact, those are the people that I'm friends with today.
Okay.
The ones who have quit, who will talk about it.
Because in case anybody outsider perspective, basically depending on your ranking in Scientology, your OT level in Scientology, they can't talk to people that are lower than them about higher up things, and higher up people can't talk to them about lower things because it would destroy their mind. It would blow their mind, basically. And I want to get to a couple questions. All right, if you guys have any questions in the chat, because I haven't seen my favorite question come up yet, but I'll answer a couple of the questions. Ace asked a question. He said, can you ask more about the connection with Peter Moon? We need to see some reaction from our friends. We talked a little bit about Vincent. Vincent was a higher up compared to Chuck. They did encounter each other. But you said he was closer to LRH.
Yes.
Vincent gave me, I mean, not Vincent, Chuck gave me his interpretation of what he thinks of Montauk, but maybe we'll get into that on another episode. If we get, once we do a part 2. Let's see. Sounds like some Freemasonry work. Yeah, that's true. I heard a couple more questions come in. There's some silly questions that come in. Do you think Scientology had anything to do with the death of Hulk Hogan?
No, I don't. No. Wait. There are some exceptions. There's always important things. There are people that consider themselves Scientologists for very brief periods, who then go on to do heinous, all-time bad stuff. For instance, we talked about, what's his name, Manson. There's no question that he did some of the sit down, like grabbed a couple Scientology books, and then was running back and forth, playing the quack therapist of Dianetics or Scientology with another inmate. And they'd go back and forth, and they'd run some of this stuff. They'd read the Hubbard books, because the Hubbard books are really, I mean, I tried to give you just the introductory level books. There's even more crazy books of Hubbard's about the thought wave, high frequency wave stuff and stuff like that. You get into that, and then you will get some people that are kind of what I would consider, what the modern Scientology, official Scientology, considers flaky Scientologists. And so, was there a bunch of flaky Scientologists in Hulk Hogan's life? I rely on the police. I have total respect for the police.
At the end of he actually got close to Scientology towards the end of his life, is why people are actually speculating on it. And it's also probably because he's in the Florida area, grew up in the Florida area. So Florida, I assume man. That's the, he's very much a Florida man. And then earlier when we were talking about the out-of-body 3D 360 look at yourself, somebody put 3D versus 3D 3D vision versus 2D vision.
Yeah.
And make sure I didn't miss anything else. Because then I'm going to ask my closing question, because I asked you this on the phone the other day and you gave me a very surprising answer. What do you think? Do you think Shelley Miscavige is still alive?
Yes, of course she's alive. Absolutely. Yeah.
And why do you
now,
think that?
I mean, I think I respect lawyers, police officers, government, FBI agents, the hardworking. I'm a old fuddy-duddy. Gradually, that's what I evolved into in late in life. I believe when she passes away, if the Scientology private eyes that are working for their attorneys don't erase her records of death, that there will be records in California, somewhere in the vicinity of the archives base, which is at Twin Peaks. I forget what the exact name. Rim of the World Street up there, up above. What's the city there? Is it? I forget what the name of that city in California is, but it's near the international base. It's a couple hours away. Anyways, there'll be records when she actually passes away. I believe in just legitimate way the society works. There'll be records of it. It's not going to be hidden. I don't think that Scientology is going to kill her or take her some else place.
Well, I also thought it was interesting that you told me that she has a grateful impact when it comes to Scientology. She's not just meant to be David Miscavige's arm candy. She actually has a more significant role than just being
Absolutely.
the wife of the current, person in charge.
Yeah, I told you what my jobs were. In my last final years, I worked in the Author Services branch. Guess who were the two top people at Author Services branch who had just left the Author Services branch, but were the two top people? David Miscavige and Shelley. They had computer logins. Their names were COB ASI. That was Miscavige. Shelley was COB ASI assistant. So she was, and then they were the only two people that were higher than Norman Starkey and higher than virtually everyone at Author Services. And even when they left, they still retained their computer privileges to the full Author Services computer system. And there's a few other paper pusher details. I removed all of the L. Ron Hubbard communication to David Miscavige off of the ASI computer and transported it myself personally in a standalone little custom computer up to the international base in the office, 2 offices away from Miscavige's office were the computer server room, and I gave it to the computer operations officer at the international base, who I was at that level of the top computer operations officer, the only one privileged besides Shelley Miscavige and David Miscavige to go into the computer system if they wished. So at Author Services, but the power had long shifted back to where Claire Headley was. The RTC power was in the offices at that particular set of buildings that she was in the later set of buildings that are up there at the Interbase where Miscavige is today. Now Shelley, I believe if Shelley had my brain in her brain and she had access to virtually all of the top writings, final writings, private writings of Hubbard, she would be faithful to Hubbard's wishes. When you're at the tippy top level, your loyalty is the most important characteristic. You are loyal to the death. You're a keeping Scientology fanatic way above Tom Miscavige. Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Tom
Well,
Cruise is,
and just thinking back to that, she's been around. She was around him as a child. She was running messages for him. She was one of the closest people to him in my eyes. Like I've seen the people that are still around Scientology or at that high of a level, and I was like, I couldn't imagine why they would just get rid of her. And it's not like David Miscavige is getting married again or anything. He doesn't have another wife around. Like
every communication with the pilot that went Trementina and Matt and every other of the couples that are at the other vault sites. There's very few people that are even allowed to know about what's going on at all those places. Guess who's one of those people? Shelley. Shelley knows about the Holy Grail stuff. She's working at the Holy Grail headquarters. So to me, if you're totally in the know of everything L. Ron Hubbard ever plopped on Earth, she's at the tippy top cherry place of the top plopping Holy Grail stuff of Scientology. And you can't really get more dedicated. And I do believe she's probably more dedicated to L. Ron Hubbard than she is to Miscavige. But Miscavige is the boss, so she'll, of course, do what he says. And there's a particular writing, a very famous writing, which I mentioned on the chat sites over and over and over. And it doesn't really sink in. I mean, if you're at this level of sort of fanatical dedication and loyalty to Hubbard, you should take to heart, like a robot, a brainwashed robot, what he says. And what he says there is when you're, and Shelley's more in what's called the Manuela job position to Miscavige, who is in the Bolivar position. So she has to always be, she's going to be the Manuela role in the same way that Mary Sue Hubbard was to L. Ron Hubbard. So the top power couple of all time, of course, is L. Ron Hubbard and Mary Sue. The next top power couple, the writer Janet Reitman called Miscavige the Brigham Young of Scientology. So Brigham Young's wife is Shelley Young. So yeah, Shelley is to him. And she's going to be that for as long as they're married. But then on the other hand, she's got a little more, she's kind of like the Mary Sue also to Hubbard's legacy. And Trementina is your legacy Holy Grail spot, okay? One of them.
Do you think her and David had some kind of a falling out if she's at would you call it Twin Peaks the whole time, or do you think there's something else going on?
Leah
Or
Remini.
do you think he's still visited?
Leah Remini's TV show, she had a guest on there, Valerie Haney. Valerie Haney is probably the best insight for the close connection between Dave and Shelley.
Okay.
A few other people, Mike Rinder mentions it, like how many times did they see them being affectionate with one another and not being affectionate? And then also there's a new defector, the man who made all the movies, who Scientology tried to make its own movies and they were horrible. The man who came along from Hollywood, who was a professional, who helped make all the good movies, like the better movies, he's been a recent defector just in the last couple of years. Mitch Brisker.
Yeah.
He's the one who saw Miscavige go into the plane bedroom with Miscavige's assistant, and they stayed there the whole night. So he witnessed.
Well, and there also are some accounts, but this is when they were way younger, about them like sneaking out and going dancing on nights that they shouldn't leave. But that was back when they were younger and first met. Like I'd never heard any stories after that, and they didn't get disciplined for it. And yeah, it was remarkable that they didn't get disciplined for it.
David Miscavige, we call it basically committing premarital sex or adultery while you're in the Sea Org is supposed to result in severe penalties, like going to the prison system. He engaged in premarital sex with somebody else, and he never got in any trouble. And then also one of the other top defectors who's written a book, Jesse Prince, you know about the interrogation procedures called security checking. Anyways, Jesse was security checking Miscavige and found out Miscavige was going out with another top, with Miscavige's boss, to Las Vegas, sleeping and gambling on L. Ron Hubbard's money. So
oh wow.
Yeah.
That'll get you written up, you'd think.
No,
Gosh,
and
it must be a certain level of privilege at that point.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me, Chuck. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to do it again. There's already people excited to have us talk about more stuff. So I would be happy to have you on again. We'll give it a week or so, and then if anybody's got any questions that they would like to ask, just leave them in the comment section of this, and then I'll make sure to jot them down and I can make sure to ask Chuck next time. I appreciate everybody that watched. Oh, everybody says, thank you, Chuck. I enjoyed this. Yeah, Mud Rabbit, if you get a chance, go back and watch the beginning. We covered some of the things because you kind of popped in halfway. And I'm going to leave this up for everybody to check out. It's still on YouTube and still on Kick. So, once again, thank you, Chuck. I'm going to do a little bit of closing and then we'll get out of here. But I appreciate your time.
Sure. Remember
All right, have a
Xenu.
good rest of your night. Oh, yeah, remember Xenu. Is there any other rip words I need to say on the way out? OT4, OT5, OT6, 7, RT6, fourth dynamic engram, body thetan. All right.
No, yeah, body thetans. That's the only one. If you know what body thetans are, those are the ghosts. You could just ask, hey, are Xenu's ghosts, do you guys call them body thetans? You see that? Their faces will go white.
Well, thank you again. And everybody watching, I appreciate it. You guys have a good night.
Dance. Dance. Dance.
This is for all you lovers out there.
Dance.
History is going to change.